Hello and welcome. Well, today, what are we talking about, or what else can we talk about other than the president's media encounter after 6 months being in office? The president finds it reason to talk to the media, probably just explain to him what things are, not necessarily making any huge promises, but an encounter, an information. It's very good in times like these. And so he did. And then the media also had an opportunity to ask a question or two. Obviously, quite a lot of media houses, everybody bombarding the president with their questions. He did his best to answer some. And there are some who think some answers were satisfactory, others were not. But overall, what did you at home think? If you monitored it on the radio, if you monitored it on the television, what did you think? The president's posture, his tone, his speech, his confidence, his interaction with people. What do you think? 6 months, was it too early? Should we have waited a year when things are a bit more clearer before the president comes out to speak? Or you think 6 months, it's okay? Well, that's a conversation we are going to have today, because after all, it's a representative government and we gave him the mandate to go and represent us. It's only fair that he comes to us to tell us exactly what he's doing with our mandate. Today we're looking at the president's encounter with the media. Name is Nana Sakwa IV, chief of the famous Little Republic of Akwemwe Dumasa, and your favorite TV show host. Don't go away. When I come back, we're having a beautiful conversation. Well, thank you very much for staying with me. In studio is Dr. Odro Osang, who is a political analyst. Doctor, you're welcome.
Thank you, Nana.
Very grateful. On a day like this, you need a governance expert. Later on, Vitus Azim will join us on the phone. He was a former executive director for Ghana Integrity Initiative. Also joining us on the phone will be Professor Godfred Bokpin, who's head of Department of Finance, University of Ghana. So don't go away, it's going to be quite interesting. But starting in studio, obviously, Doc, obviously, plenary comments about the organization, the planning, the atmosphere, the feel of what went on today.
Thank you very much, Nana. I think the planning, I would say it went well. I would say that the media houses and the non-media houses, because some non-media men and women were there. It was okay. The whole atmosphere was okay. The questions that were asked were very good. And I think this time around, I'll give the media thumbs up for asking some of the difficult questions. That's exactly what we expected. By way of response, I think the president also gave out some responses that he could give, though some of them he could not go into detail. Some that he thought that he could not give, he gave an opportunity for the ministers to give out those responses. So all in all, I think, well, it went well. 6 months. They call it media encounter or presidential encounter. But I think it is more of information sharing session. What is left is for the media to also carry it over or do further validation. One thing that is missing from our media landscape or from our democracy is that when some of these leaders put statements out there, it is up to the media houses or those who receive the statement, being the journalists, to carry it further, to go and do further validation, further verification, and get back to us because they represent us. So all in all, I think it went well.
The issue of passing some of the questions to some of the other ministers, what's your take on it? There are some who think, well, it's fine. There's some who think, oh, no, he wasn't on top of his game. He should have answered all the questions. What school of thoughts do you come?
No, I believe in the school of thoughts that believes that the president has every right to pass on to a particular question to a minister or an appointee who is best placed to respond to it. Because when you look at the issue of the vice president banker, that question, and the one that had to do
finances,
the finance issues, you know, the president think that, well, look, it is the vice president or the Attorney General is best placed to respond to it. So I think I see this whole session as executive accounting for the political power entrusted in their hands by the citizens of Ghana, and they are accounting through the media to the people of Ghana. That's how I see it. And any member of the executive can respond to any of the questions. If people are not satisfied, then they can come back.
6 months, was it not too early?
I don't think so. Insofar as a country, we allow governments to come up with annual plans and annual budgets, and they are in the process of implementing. They've gone through the implementation process 6 months, and they want to tell us what they've been able to do 6 months. This is not parliament. They are telling the media, so the media can verify and validate. What it does in governance is that it helps them to be on their toes. It tells them to do stock taking. It helps the media to also do fact checking. And when they do the fact checking and they realize that the government is not, after all, on the right path as they claim to be, then they can put the government on fire. So for me, continuous feedback is important. And 6 months is good. The president or the government can also do it at the end of the year, of which we know that definitely the president will go to parliament very soon. The Minister for Finance will also go to parliament very soon to present the 2018 budget. And you know, before you present the 2018 budget, you have to do a stock taking or a review of how the nation has performed. So all in all, I think it is good. But I will call it executive accountability.
At this moment, I'm going to go for a quick break, and then when we come back, the conversation continues. Well, it's getting more and more exciting. We have a very prominent guest who's just joined us. We have Dr. Vladimir Nchidansu, who's obviously foreign and security expert, also lecturing at the Kofi Annan
Ghana Armed Forces.
Ghana Armed Forces. He wears so many hats. Today I'll keep him as a foreign and security expert, foreign affairs expert and security expert. I think that should be fine.
So that we can find.
Yeah, that'll be fine. That will be fine. Doc, you're welcome.
Thank you.
And then, Dr. Joe, at the break, you raised something which I think was we are all missing. That we always demand accountability from the executives. The judiciary, the legislation arm, we seem to not bother for them to come and account to us.
Yes, I think it's a conversation we should start having as a nation because Parliament is made up of parliamentarians. It's true that they represent various constituencies. Whether or not they account to them as various constituencies is another matter. But then nationally, we should have a way of getting Parliament as an institution to account to us what they've been able to do on our behalf in terms of passage of laws, in terms of holding the other organs of government by way of checks and balances in the governance arena. When it comes to the judiciary too, the judiciary is an important arm of government. They do the legal interpretation and they apply it in resolution of dispute. The extent to which they have performed those functions, they're also expected to account to us. So we shouldn't always look at executive accounting to us, executive accountability. It's good that the president accounts. But if the president is doing that, he's doing that as a leader of the nation, leader of the executive. What then becomes of that of the judiciary and the members of parliament or parliament as a body? So in future, anytime the president wants to do that, we should have the three people there: the head of the legislature, the head of the judiciary, the head of the executive being the president. Each and every one of them is expected to tell us what they've been able to do within 6 months or within 1 year, if they so choose. And I think when you do that, you call it through accountability to the people.
As a footnote, what I would say is that it's very true that as soon as we mention accountability, we only look at the executive arm of government. That's unfortunate. And as you say, in several places, what the president would do is to line his people up. When there is a question, Minister of Foreign Affairs, I think this is in your domain. Oh, Chief Justice, this is in your domain. Kind of. So it's a collective kind of accountability.
I think for the first time we saw that today.
Yes.
They passed some questions to the other people.
Exactly.
And then the answer, then there was two schools of thought. One that saying, well, then it means the president is not up to his game.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I don't buy that idea because the point is that he's ruling with them. It's a kind of collective kind of accountability. Again, the people and the institutional accountability. Unfortunately, we have a situation where the socioeconomic partners of development, we the ordinary people, don't hold our governors to account. Institutional accountability. How has the police worked up to this point? What are the inhibiting factors that make them not live up to expectation? How has the military worked? How has, all these things, we don't scrutinize them as we should. And when you talk about accountability, for them to work within the constraints of budget, or within budgetary constraints and all other logistic constraints, and that's how they worked. It helps the nation to find ways of curtailing their deficits. And so I believe when you talk about accountability, we must look at the totality of governance and not just the executive.
I think that's a big conversation that has to start.
Definitely.
It's a big conversation. So, I mean, but you see, the judiciary has got this, the independence of the judiciary kind of thing, so the Chief Justice comes to say, well, there's this case at the Supreme Court, and we are wondering whether, A should be interpreted this
not necessarily. Some of their rulings, we are all kind of sheep following. I may be whatever it is, PhD, KKK, YYY, but I don't know the law. And we have our own idiosyncratic ideas about what the law should be. Cases come to the courts and they are dismissed and whatnot, and we murmur. I mean, we insult the judiciary. Here is a situation where they have to account to us for us to understand how the law helps for development. So you hear of a case and say, it's a political case and this case. But when you see the law working, the law could not have prosecuted those persons. The law could not have, because if you don't do these things, it has security implications. The Dagmon crisis is one of such things we can put straight to test. When people have been found holding the head of the king and whatnot, and people just concluded that we have the culprits. But the law clearly says that that person is not prosecutable. And we, the ordinary people, don't understand. Then we see the long arm of the party in power. So if the judiciary could explain to us why these things do not work that way, it helps in building the nation generally, and it helps in mitigating those situations where we take up arms against each other.
There was another question, let me stay with you, which Kwesi Pratt was asking if Morocco, trying to join the AU, was the AU going to agree because they saw Morocco as a foreign entity, and therefore it was like a colonial power coming to join the AU. President's response was that, look, there's still a lot of deliberations,
sure.
And therefore they were holding back. They're not going to answer yet. But Prof, you are, is Morocco a foreign entity?
I wouldn't say Morocco is a foreign entity. Since 1945, the question of Pan-Africanism has created a situation where our effort at integration has been a geographical we have been a geographical meaning to Pan-Africanism or African integration. And so instead of EU, where you need to qualify by some criteria, ours is that your geographical location enjoins you to be part of the AU. They were part until the Sahrawi Republic problem came and they went out. So wanting to come back is not a problem because they, after that, decided to even apply to join the EU. And it is there that they are rather a foreign entity. So they were told in point blank this thing that, no, you can't belong to the EU, even though they have enormous trade with the EU. Integration is trade induced, and Morocco thought they would have used that, to join the EU. They were not allowed. Far away, Kazakhstan and others, the EU rather even wants them because of political reasons. So I don't see anything wrong with Morocco wanting to come back to the AU. The problem rather lies with they are wanting to be part of ECOWAS. That is where the problem lies, and people are discussing it. If you ask me, maybe as a specialist in the area, if you ask me, I'll say because of the non-geographical contiguity of Morocco and the rest of West Africa, we don't have to allow that. It will be big problematic. It will be problematic to have ECOWAS, being linked to Morocco.
Let's hold that.
It becomes a problem because integration lies in the kind of trade you have in infrastructure that you have, intra-trade, which is very important. And so let our leaders discuss. But if you ask me personally, Morocco cannot and should not be part of ECOWAS.
Let me go to the phones and engage Vitus Azim. Vitus, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Vitus, today the president, had a media encounter, and obviously, corruption came up. What the president was saying that, look, he was gathering evidence and, he didn't want to go to court and lose cases, But I think, prior to coming into government, everybody thought that, listen, one of the trump cards that the opposition played was corruption, corruption, corruption. And here you are with the mantle 6 months down the line, still gathering evidence to secure one judgment. Is this a government that looks like, look, I'm going to stop corruption, or it's the same thing, well, give me the evidence and I will prosecute?
It looks like the same thing that when you're outside, you say a lot of things. When you come in, it becomes difficult for you to act. Because at least 6 months, if they had at least one case, 2 cases would have been an indication that you are serious about pursuing these things. And when you look at even the American case that they set up a 17-member committee, up to now they haven't told us what has happened. So it doesn't look like when what you say outside is the same as when you come in. And that raises a lot of eyebrows.
You and I know that. I know that, you know, some of the allegations that we say in the media may not hold water in court. But, you know, when they were coming into power, you know, they joined us in hurling all these allegations left, right. And so it becomes a bit frustrating. I mean, which is which? Is it that there isn't that much corruption, but you just use it as a, you know, a ticket to come to government, or there is corruption, but they can't be bothered?
Well, it just means that we are left, we the ordinary people are left with no excuse than to say that there was no corruption as alleged by them. Otherwise, 6 months is a long time enough. At least 1 or 2 cases would have come up, but we're not seeing it. Of course, it's true that you don't want to go to a court with a case that you cannot successfully prosecute. But how long does it take? You saw the boss gate scandal. Mm-hmm. It took less than a weekend for the BNI to come out and exonerate the person. And you see, that's the other side of it. It's not an issue of pursuing former public officials. You should be pursuing people that are alleged to have engaged in corruption, whether they are former or they are current people. So once you start talking about former, you already give the impression that you are going to discriminate in whatever what action you are going to take. And that's the unfortunate part of it. The boss gate thing is something that if everybody was expecting that the president, he was outside the country, he had come back, he would say, no, I want this thing to be investigated, I want to see what is happening. He hasn't done that. So if you now start following NDC people, why would people say that you are a switch hunt?
You have to start from within first.
Yes, start from your house.
Okay, hold on, because I think I have Dr. Vladimir Nchi here, and he's signaling. I think he wants to chip in a comment. Doc.
Yes, I would just like to chip in a comment. I mean, we must try to be seriously patient with our understanding of what goes on. I've always said, no matter what government is in power, we don't have to precipitate the president in making choices where the choices are not his. The president has no right to stampede any court into action. There are state institutions. I always have said that if I have any blame, it is institutionalism that we have to make work in Ghana, so that the president, I mean, finds himself impotent when the institution is working by the remit of the Constitution. So no matter which president has come, let them say, why are you not talking about Tamari? Why? Well, let us ask the president to ask the institution to work. But if we do it this way, the way my brother is talking, as if every president has every right to take the court, to have his own court, I think we need to get away from that. So whether it is former or present, it is the institutions of state built to work on such cases, built to work on whatever it is, that we must make sure they work. Other than that, we have what we call vengeance politics all the time, because when the president comes, he will be looking for something of the old and make sure that I promise that's why I came. Let us end that thing. And I think the president has said that he has set up a committee in spite of all that the BNIs and others have come out with. He said there is another committee to work on it.
Dr. Sai, has the president not got the right to tell the Attorney General that, look into this case and within 3 weeks or 4 weeks, give me something, results on this?
Well, he has the right to say that.
That's right, but
you see, the rule of the game is evidence. Remember, in this country, we've gone through this phase before. By the previous NDC administration, at the point in time, they went to court, and anytime they go to court, they lose the case out. And it's typical of lawyers. The president is a lawyer, and he wants to make sure that he proceeds along the lines of evidence. Professor Atta Mills was also very cautious in prosecuting people. He would tell you that, look, give me the evidence before you initiate the prosecution. So I think it is better us gathering all the evidence and being double sure that the prosecution can lead to conviction. If you are not able to do that and you prosecute and you go and it gets to a point where you can't bring the evidence, then it means after all, you don't have any evidence. And that is also suicidal, because you will go into the next election and people will tell you that, look, you made all this noise, you've gone to court 3 times, you've lost. And when you look at the standard in criminal cases, all that the defense counsel will have to raise is a reasonable doubt. Just the slightest reasonable doubt, he would escape conviction. So if you are prosecuting, you have to be very careful. Secondly, the president has promised that he's going to establish the Office of Special Prosecutor. And this Special Prosecutor bill, I hear, is ready. They are doing consultation, or it's even in Parliament. So I think these factors may have delayed the prosecution. So we need to be very careful. We need to hasten slowly. We should not politicize crime.
Absolutely.
Crime is crime, irrespective of whether you are NPP or NDC. Once it is against the laws of Ghana, we should go all out and prosecute. But the rule of the game is that make sure you have evidence, else the person will get off the hook. And once he gets off the hook, that's the end of the government.
Vitus, you've had some comments here. We have to be a bit more patient for more evidence.
You see, I think that they are mixing the two issues. We're not saying that go to court and prosecute, but at least initiate some investigation. And I just give the example of the boss issue. Because the government had an interest in it, they took less than 3 days to investigate and exonerate the person. They have the BNI, they have the police, they have the IOCO. How many investigations have they done? Because for you to build the evidence, you have to do the investigation.
Yeah.
We are not aware of any investigation that have been done seriously, and they have found out there's no evidence for you to go to court, or that they have some evidence, but they need more evidence to go to court. So nobody said that just rush to court. You need the evidence to go. But then you have to initiate the investigation. And you have the bodies that are to do the investigation, and we're not seeing that. So I think that's the point that I'm making.
I think I get Vitus to that. You have to ruffle the basket a little bit.
No,
I mean, 3 days. When the boss gate came, within 5 minutes, BNI has gone out there, come and say, oh, there's nothing wrong.
Wait a minute.
So can they do the reverse?
We can interrogate how the BNI worked and find out whether they worked according to the remits of the Constitution, as I've always said. My brother Vitus is in a very important organization where you need to really have the patience from where he's sitting to be able to be very accurate and be able to, know that integrity is going on. That's why we call it integrity. We stampeded the NDC into unnecessary prosecutions, from Vodafone all the way to whatever you are. Dagbon, they said we have evidence, new evidence, so we are now going to prosecute new charges. 13 cases, 14, sorry. Not a single one was won in court. Because we made the presidents open their mouths to say, I'm going to do it. So our expectation was high. And then we suffer from what we normally call expectation gap syndrome. Yeah. We were expecting that President Tatamini say he has new evidence. And the former President Jerry John only said he has even the key to it. We stampeded. But if we allowed the institutions of state to take their time and work and advise the Mr. President, this will not hold. Let's not disgrace us. 14 cases.
Not one.
Not one. What is the integrity of those cases? Still, the grassroots and the ordinary people like you and me are grumbling that because of. But most of the people were in opposition then, but not a single one went through. Maybe if we had taken our time, and once you've prosecuted and lost the case criminally, the lawyer will tell me you can't go back. But if we had taken our time and let them lie and we did a proper investigation, there's no limitation of statute, or what do you call it?
Yeah, limitation of.
And we could have gotten them. But now that we tried them, we stampeded the president to make promises. And the promises, finally, that's what we are saying. That look, the president is a president. Let us not make him a jack of all trades. That he pokes his nose into every little case. Prosecute the person. Do this. Do that. Let me have the papers. All he has to do is to find out from the Attorney General what is happening. And look, encourage them to work according to the remit given them by the Constitution. If we do that, the integrity will always hold.
Vitus, have I still got Vitus? Well, I think
same thing. Nobody's asking the president to stamp. Nobody's trying to stampede the president. But the Yoko and the Attorney General and all those are under the president, and the president can direct them to do some investigations. So before they go into court, are there any allegations that are being investigated that we are not aware about?
Wow.
That's the point that we're making. And the question is, why is it that the boss case was so promptly investigated in 3 days and the man was exonerated, and now they are taking so long to 6 months to investigate other allegations?
Well,
it's a simple case.
Vitus, thank you very much for those for your comments and your input. Thanks for joining us. That's Vitus Azim, former executive director, Ghana Integrity Initiative. But let me go back to why would Morocco want to join West Africa? I mean, that's
no. Basically, Morocco feels isolated. You see, the AMU, the Arab Maghreb Union, it's not effective. In fact, it is the only union out of the many, in about the 8 that the AU has accepted, which has not sealed with the AU. The ECOWAS is there, the SADC is there, COMESA is there, EAC is there, IGAD is there, and SENSAD. But the problem is that the African Economic Community Project, the Abuja project we call it, in 1991 created 5 regions, each one to have an EU-like kind of union. ECOWAS 1 union, SADC 1 union, ECAS 1 union, EAC 1 union, and then the AMU 5, with strong currencies to be put together by 2025, a 34-year trajectory, by 2025 to have one currency for Africa. We started off in 1991. It is only the AMU that is seen not to be working, and it's because they don't gel. You know, the countries that make up the AMU don't gel. Then the AU Morocco thing happened, and Morocco went out. So coming back to the AU fold, which obviously is an acceptable thing already, they feel that they must get a union to join. There is hardly any country in this world that doesn't belong to any union, economic union, one way or the other. There's not a single country, you know. So it wants to see itself as part of a union, so that trade would go on, infrastructure will be developed, and that kind of thing. So that's the desperation. And if they look around, AMU is not working, they can join ECAS. They can join SADC, Southern Africa, community. They can join EAC, East African Community. The closest will be, and Mauritania used to be part of it, and they are even coming back. Mauritania is dialoguing seriously with ECOWAS, so that they are now. And every time we have a dialogue with any other outside West Africa, it is called ECOWAS plus 1. That's ECOWAS plus Mauritania. We do a lot of things together. That is why they want to come.
I mean, at the moment, is ECOWAS the strongest among the lot, or?
I would not say ECOWAS is among them, but we have done a lot of things others haven't done. But the strongest among them actually is the EAC, which is more compact. They are more, in fact, they have achieved a lot.
Trading amongst each
trading amongst each other, infrastructure is going on, and they have designed a new infrastructure development. They are close to a common currency, things like that. You know, it is only instability which is creating problems for them. SADC would have been the most endowed, but unfortunately, there again, they don't have leadership. South Africa wants to bully its way through.
Well, when the president met the media today, one of the issues that came up was the issue of the nation's debt. And Bernard Avle from CTFM actually raised a question and, gave, some numbers about some bonds which the state was trying to raise, totaling 40 billion cedis in 6 months, and saying that this was going to add up to the nation's debt. The president, like you said, passed us for this one. Bawumia would answer it, passed it over to Bawumia, and Dr. Bawumia came in and said, well, no, we're borrowing these monies, but the debt is not going to go high. So I have on the phone Professor Bokpin, who's the head of Department Finance, University of Ghana, to help us how the addition works up. Prof, you're welcome.
Good evening. Good evening to your cherished listeners.
Good evening. I have in studio Dr. Vladimir Enchidanso and Dr. Eric Odro Osain. I have, I'm surrounded with doctors. If I don't go home with intelligence today, man, we'll be very little left. But
yeah,
Dr.
my regards to all of them, especially Dr. Enchidanso.
Okay.
Very good friend of mine.
Good. He's hearing you. But Doc, how does it work if we're going to add 40 billion cedis worth of bonds into the system, and the government came into power complaining about, the others borrowing too much? So how does it work? Well, the vice president says, no, it's not going to increase the debt stock.
If you look at the borrowing that the government has done, the bulk of that has actually gone to refinancing maturing debt, which we call rollover. But there is also some truth in the fact that our debt in nominal terms has gone up under the new government.
Okay.
If you want to know, when you look at the third calendar that government has published recently, they have indicated that in the third quarter they intend to raise a little above 17 billion cedis. Out of this amount, a little above 14 billion cedis is for refinancing or rollover. But a little above 3 billion cedis is to meet the financing requirements of the government that would suggest how much the debt stock would actually increase. So if you take the third quarter as an example, that tells you that even though government is going to raise a little above 17 billion, 14 billion of that is actually to restructure or to meet the rollover requirements of government. And that our debt stock in nominal terms or in absolute terms is going to go up by just a little above 3 billion. But there is another layer to that. When you look at our debt stock in relative terms, if you look at it relative to GDP, then you are most likely to see that our debt to GDP ratio is moderating, even though government is taking additional debt. Then in that case, you also have to factor in the growth in GDP over the last 6 months. So if the rate of economic growth is higher than the rate at which we are adding to our public debt, then it means that even though government will be taking additional debt, the overall impact would actually be decreasing. Then that is when you look at debt sustainability from the fiscal sustainability approach, which says that if you are addition to your debt stock from the primary fiscal balance and then the interest payments are fully offset or more than offset that from the real economic growth, then debt sustainability is guaranteed. That is how we are looking at it. But if you look at it in absolute terms, in nominal terms, there is no way you can say that with all this borrowing, our debt in absolute terms haven't gone up. But if you look at it in relative terms, relative to GDP, because debt sustainability is looked at in relative to other fundamentals of the economy. So one way of looking at it is debt to GDP ratio. There are other debt sustainability indicators, like the present value of debt to GDP ratio, debt service to revenue ratio, and where probably we need to focus our attention on and probably hear a elicit response from government is how is this debt management strategy impacting on our debt service to revenue ratio. Because if you look at the latest debt sustainability indicators that the IMF together with the International Development Association actually made available, Ghana has breached 2 of those indicators in terms of debt, present value of debt to GDP ratio, and then debt service to revenue ratio. Let me take you back to the MPP's 2017 budget. Out of the projected tax revenue of a little above 34 billion cedis, an amount of 14 billion cedis was actually set aside just to service our debt. That is a lot. So we are spending more than a third of our total tax revenue just to service our debt. It was a little worse in 2016, where Ghana government spent a little above 11 billion cedis just to service our debt. This has nothing to do with principal repayment. It is just the interest component on our public debt. The implications of that are very, very evident around in terms of crowding out priority spending. So you will find that the real impact of the rising public debt on government revenue envelope didn't necessarily change with a change in government, because that is the reality.
Okay.
That is the reality. So there are more fundamental issues that we have to be able to address going forward in order to situate whatever gains we make today in a more durable and sustainable manner. There are real challenges confronting Ghana today that we have to be able to address. Whatever gains we are seeing today is just because the external environment is also quite favorable. The government has some goodwill that they are leveraging on. But you know, if you look at Ghana's economic history, you will find that whatever progress we actually make, do not last that long. Look, if you go into history, you will find that in 2006, Ghana actually exited the IMF program. Then we were under the Poverty Reduction and Growth Facility. And we abandoned that in 2006, largely because Ghana had just completed the HEPIC release in 2004, and then the Multilateral Debt Relief Initiative in 2006. And therefore, our debt to GDP ratio came down significantly to about 36%. That meant that we had borrowing space, and therefore we could inject growth into the economy through external debt financing by scaling up investment in infrastructure. So we started borrowing. I can assure you, or I can tell you that in less than 3 years, that decision was reversed when Ghana made a U-turn in 2009. So between 2009 and July 2012, Ghana was effectively under an IMF program, largely because of the onset of the global financial crisis, external development, and all of that. So there are real issues. And then, so the next question that we also have to ask ourselves is that whilst we have seen that the first quarter GDP on projection basis from the Ghana Statistical Service increased significantly. I think it was 6.5% over the same period last year. That would suggest good news. But the question is, what is the quality of that GDP growth? Did it come with significant job creation? How inclusive is that particular growth? Because as a country, we just can't celebrate GDP, because GDP is not the ultimate. So today we are talking about inclusive growth. GDP growth that is broad-based, that ropes in moderate and low-income earners. These are issues that we have to be concerned. But when you have an economy where your growth is largely driven by hydrocarbon production, and here I'm talking about oil and gas, okay, which are not labor-intensive, then this is not the kind of growth that you want to actually celebrate.
Doug, thank you.
I can understand that government has done well and all of that, but I think that we need to extend the argument and look at it within broader context.
Thank you.
That growth is quite beneficial to Ghanaians. Growth enables Ghanaians to participate in the growth process and also in the distribution of the wealth.
Doug, thank you. Sorry, though, thank you very much because of time, but I mean, at least you explained it to us. In the English version was much simpler. The English version was much simpler. I want to say thank you very much. And I saw Dr. Drew, I don't want you to comment on that, so I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, I like the way he did the analysis. He's explained the thing so people would then understand it, to suggest that growth is good, but you need to sustain it. It is only when you sustain growth that development comes. You can never develop if you don't see growth in the system. Now, I am interested in the term he introduced, sustainability of growth, as well as sustainability and then inclusiveness. What is the meaning of growth? Growth is growth when the average Ghanaian down there feels it. And he also went ahead to explain the fact that the NPP's budget, they indicated that about 14 billion is going to be used to service debt. What it then means is that if you look at it in absolute terms, you may say that they have increased the debt stock of the country. But then relatively, if you use any of the indicators, and I'm happy he walks us through the 3 indicators. We can use debt to GDP. You can also use present value of the debt to GDP. You can also use the debt service to revenue. Whichever way we look at it, I think we are missing something as a country. The managers of this economy are not able to explain it well to the average Ghanaian. And then the sustainability.
Because I mean, when Bawumia spoke, it was Greek.
We should be able to explain things to Ghanaians. But remember, if we are measuring our growth, or if we are measuring the management of our debt stock by using the debt servicing to the revenue ratio, then it means that citizens have a role to play. Because if the more they pay their taxes, the more we'll be able to get money, so that we'll have the fiscal space available to undertake development. But if I don't understand all of this, then the understanding is that you are borrowing, just as people are making political capital out of it. So I think we have a lot of work to do, and I'm happy he's broken it down.
I have always said that, I mean, understanding the economy is very important, and we don't have to politicize things if we don't understand. I mean, debt sustainability, the IMF has gotten the criteria for measuring debt sustainability. I mean, your debt to export ratio, or GDP as people call it, but normally it's the debt to export ratio, or how much of your revenue you are using in servicing your debt. If you are using about 20 to 25% of your revenues in servicing your debt, I mean, you can't develop with only about 70% of your revenues. And in working that is how even HIPIC is worked. Now, we reached a point where, because of politics, we always want to borrow, and we borrowed and borrowed and borrowed. So that what we're doing now is to borrow.
But borrowing is a political mantra. Look, I was able to get 3 billion, therefore vote for me.
It's not bad, but if your borrowing is such that it's borrowing for consumption, you've got to be very careful. And again, you see that he said it's not a new thing what the government is doing, but here, this time we can sustain it. We have always been borrowing in order just to service an old debt, which debt didn't give us any growth. And these are the things we've been doing. Fortunately for us, the 17 billion that we're talking about, 14 billion is going to service that debt. So the nominal increase will only be on the 3 billion.
Yeah.
You know, and we need to make the ordinary people understand these measures, so that we are able to know that, look, yes, as for the borrowing, we'll go borrowing, but for what purpose? And growth, what is leading the growth? It's got the hydrocarbons that are leading, and the extractive industry that's leading the growth.
So that's not trickling down.
And
Absolutely.
it's not sustainable.
But Doc, while you're here, let me stay with you on security.
That's right.
Bagging, devices have become. And one of the questions to the president today was that, have you swept your office? And he says, look, you have to ask in his office.
My take on that is, when I heard about the whole thing, I was a little angry. I like Honorable Fuseni a lot. He's a simple man. He laughs a lot, and he's very conversational and that kind of thing. But I think it was very wrong to start with. I'm not a judge. Why am I saying this? I do not know whether the security agencies in Ghana are able to track the activities of private security companies. Because then the whole country, we are naked. The president is naked. If private security companies can be allowed or be instructed to plant things anywhere, or to import things without passing them through checks of national security. Look, we are at a juncture in the global system where it is very, very important to know what your security is. Let me give you one example. When Clinton was chasing Osama bin Laden, it was very difficult to track him. So these are the devices used. Now, anybody going to visit Osama bin Laden is checked fully. Now, some American journalists wanted to hear his side of the story. They did all they could. They said, fine, you could see him. Osama bin Laden was in Kandahar, right in the city of Kandahar, in a certain cave-like kind of thing. They searched the Americans, and they made sure that no metal was on them. Would you believe what they used in transmitting pictures and everything from Osama bin Laden when they were interviewing him? Button. The button that you see on my shirt. We could have something inside that could take pictures and whatnot. So when they went to the cave and interviewed him, the Turkey base, which America had, was on the alert. It was beaming everything. And it was meant that when the
Button was able to transmit?
Yes, Button. Because there were devices inside. And so as soon as they left, they bombed the place. But Osama bin Laden was not there. The following day, they heard about him in Bora Bora Hills. Then Clinton came on air to say, we lost him. They lost him. Batten did that job. The American embassy in Russia was razed down in 1984, thereabout. Why? Because the Russians built the embassy for the Americans. It was found out that gadgets were in the wall. This is a typical expression of what we call walls have ears. When they raised it, now the Americans showed on television what the Russians have put in the walls. They didn't put in the walls when the American embassy was already there. When they were building it, those gadgets were there. And the Americans did the same thing to the Xerox machine. So you see, when private companies are allowed to be fixing things in offices, government offices, we should be very careful.
Dr. Sam, I'll give you the last take on this one.
You see, I think we need to be very careful as a nation. The question I'm asking myself is that then it means the security agencies may have to do a security review of all the ministry departments and agencies in all the offices. And that is going to be very expensive to us. And that's the kind of price we need to pay if we allow some of these things to happen. We should step up our game. We should make sure that we quality assure everything that happens, especially the private security agencies.
Especially those things they import into the country.
You know, so that we'll be able to cover our back.
Our young friend Ibad would always say, Adana, if you won't pay for your security, what would you pay for? Ibad always says, if you're not going to pay for your security, what would you pay for? Well, it's been very exciting. Thank you very much for watching. I want to say thank you very much to Dr. Vladimir, Dr. Sai, and all Dr. Bokpin on the phone, and Vitin Masim on the phone tomorrow. But tomorrow will be Hard Truth, and then Thursday we'll be back to do this all over again. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you very much.